Starving horse shows up at a family's door. Their next move will warm your heart. The soft hum of cicadas filled the air as the late summer sun cast a golden glow over the rolling fields surrounding the Bennett family's farmhouse. Nestled at the end of a gravel road, their home was a picture of tranquility, surrounded by fields of wildflowers, an old red barn standing proudly against the horizon. Sarah Bennett, a mother of two and a lifelong lover of animals, was in the yard, tending to her vegetable garden. Her husband, Tom, was fixing the fence near the barn, while their children, Emily and Jack, played with their Labrador Daisy in the backyard. Before we move on, let me know where you're watching from in the comments down below. "Dinner in 30 minutes, Sarah called out, brushing her hands on her apron. Jack groaned in protest, his soccer ball still mid-kick, while Emily giggled, chasing Daisy as the golden retriever wagged her tail enthusiastically. The peaceful scene was interrupted by an unexpected sound, a soft, labored whinny. Sarah froze, her eyes darting toward the driveway. At first, she thought she'd imagined it, but then there it was again, a faint, sorrowful sound, unmistakably that of a horse. "Tom!" Sarah called out, her voice tinged with alarm. Tom looked up from his work, shielding his eyes from the sun. "What is it?" Before Sarah could respond, a figure emerged from the direction of the woods, a gaunt, bedraggled horse limping its way toward their yard. Its once shiny chestnut coat was matted and riddled with patches of missing fur. The animal's ribs were painfully visible beneath its dull, tattered hide, and its head hung low, its movements slow and labored. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her heart breaking at the sight. She dropped her gardening tools and ran toward the horse, her maternal instincts kicking in. Tom was close behind her, a mix of concern and disbelief etched across his face. Emily and Jack, sensing something unusual, followed. Daisy barked excitedly, but a sharp whistle from Sarah silenced the dog. "Easy, boy," Tom murmured as they approached the horse. It flinched slightly, but didn't move away, its dark eyes wide with exhaustion and fear. Sarah reached out slowly, her voice soothing. "You're okay now. We're here to help." The horse stood still, as if it didn't have the energy to resist. Sarah's gentle hand brushed against its muzzle, and she felt a surge of sorrow at the animal's fragile state. "You poor thing," she whispered. Tom inspected the horse carefully. "It's malnourished and dehydrated," he said grimly. "Must have wandered here looking for food." Emily, clutching her brother's hand, looked up at her father with wide eyes. "Can we help him, Dad? Please?" Tom exchanged a look with Sarah, who nodded firmly. "We can't just leave him like this," she said. "Let's get him to the barn." The family worked quickly, coaxing the horse toward the barn with soft words and the promise of safety. Despite its weak state, the animal followed as if it understood that these strangers were offering a lifeline. Once inside, Sarah and Tom sprang into action. Tom fetched a bucket of water while Sarah prepared a small portion of hay, careful not to overwhelm the horse's fragile stomach. Emily and Jack watched from a distance, their faces filled with concern. "What do you think happened to him?" Jack asked quietly. Sarah sighed, stroking the horse's bony neck. "It's hard to say. He could have been abandoned or escaped from somewhere, but we'll do everything we can to help him now." The horse drank eagerly, its trembling body slowly beginning to relax. Sarah noticed a faded leather halter around its head, the remnants of what might have once been a life of care. "He must have belonged to someone," she murmured. Tom inspected the halter more closely. "There's no tag or name. We'll have to check with the local shelters and vets to see if anyone's reported a missing horse." As the evening wore on, the Bennetts continued to care for the horse. They named him Chance, a reflection of the hope they felt for his recovery. Later that night, as the family gathered in the living room, Emily turned to her parents. "Do you think Chance will be okay?" Sarah smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "He's got a long road ahead, but he's safe now. That's the first step." Little did the Bennetts know, their act of kindness was the beginning of a journey that would test their resolve, strengthen their bond, and reveal a surprising twist that none of them could have anticipated. The following morning, the Bennetts woke early to check on Chance. Sarah was the first to reach the barn, clutching a mug of coffee as the cool morning breeze brushed her face. As she opened the heavy wooden door, she was greeted by the sight of Chance standing a little taller than the day before. His ears twitched at the sound of her approach, and his tired eyes met hers with a glimmer of trust. "Good morning, big guy," Sarah said softly, setting her coffee aside and stepping closer. "How are you feeling today?" She noticed that the water bucket was nearly empty, and the small portion of hay she had left the night before had been eaten. It was a small but encouraging sign. As she gently ran her hand along his neck, Chance nickered softly, leaning into her touch. Tom entered the barn moments later, carrying a large bucket of fresh water and another portion of hay. "How's he doing?" he asked. "Better, I think," Sarah replied. "He ate and drank. That's a good start." Over the next few days, the family devoted themselves to Chance's recovery. Sarah consulted with a local veterinarian, Dr. Mallory, who visited the farm to assess Chance's condition. The vet confirmed what the Bennetts had suspected. Chance had been severely malnourished and neglected for weeks, possibly months. "He's lucky he found you," Dr. Mallory said, running her hand gently over Chance's coat, "but it's going to take time and patience to get him back to full health." Under Dr. Mallory's guidance, the Bennetts established a strict feeding routine to gradually reintroduce nutrients into Chance's diet. They groomed him daily, cleaning his coat and treating the patches of irritated skin. Tom repaired the old stall in the barn, transforming it into a cozy, clean space just for Chance. The kids played their part too. Emily spent hours sitting in the barn with Chance, reading aloud from her favorite books while he stood quietly beside her. Jack took charge of brushing Chance's mane, his small hands carefully working through the tangles. Daisy often accompanied them, her friendly presence adding to the atmosphere of comfort and care. One afternoon, as Sarah and Emily were brushing Chance, Emily paused and looked up at her mother. "Do you think he misses his old home?" Sarah sighed, her hand stilling on the brush. "I think animals like Chance know how to live in the moment," she said. "He probably doesn't think about what he's lost. He's just grateful for what he has now." Emily nodded thoughtfully, her eyes filled with determination. "Then we'll make this the best home he's ever had." As the days turned into weeks, Chance's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. His ribs, once painfully visible, began to fill out as his body regained strength. His dull matted coat was now clean and shining, a rich chestnut hue that glowed in the sunlight. His eyes, once dim with exhaustion, sparkled with curiosity and energy. The first time Chance trotted around the paddock, the Bennetts erupted into cheers. "Look at him go!" Jack shouted, clapping his hands as Chance's strong legs carried him in a graceful arc across the field. "He's getting his spirit back," Tom said, a proud smile on his face. But even as Chance thrived in his new environment, questions lingered. Sarah had contacted local shelters and rescues, but no one had reported a missing horse matching Chance's description. The family speculated about his past. Had he been abandoned, escaped, neglected by someone who couldn't care for him? One day, as Sarah was organizing feed in the barn, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. On the inside of Chance's halter, partially obscured by grime, was a faint engraving. She squinted, brushing away the dirt with her thumb until the letters became clear. Sagefield Stables. "Tom!" she called, her voice urgent. Tom came running, wiping his hands on a rag. "What is it?" "Look," Sarah said, holding up the halter. "Sagefield Stables. It's a name. Maybe it's where Chance came from." Tom furrowed his brow. "Sagefield Stables. I've heard of that before. Isn't it on the other side of town?" Sarah nodded. "I think so. We need to find out if they know anything about him." That evening, Sarah called Sagefield Stables. She explained how Chance had shown up at their property and described his condition when they found him. The woman on the other end of the line, Rachel, listened intently. "That does sound familiar," Rachel said. "We had a horse that went missing about 6 months ago during a bad storm. He fit the description, but we never found him. Let me check my records and get back to you." Sarah hung up, her emotions swirling. Part of her hoped Sagefield Stables had answers about Chance's past, but another part of her dreaded the possibility of having to say goodbye to the horse who had become such an integral part of their family. 2 days later, Rachel called back. "I think your horse is the one we lost," she said, "but there's something you should know." Sarah's heart pounded. "What is it?" "Chance was originally a rescue," Rachel explained. "He was part of a rehabilitation program for neglected horses. When the storm hit and he went missing, we feared the worst. It's a miracle he survived and found his way to you." Sarah felt a mix of relief and sadness. "So, does he belong to Sagefield Stables?" Rachel paused. "Technically, yes. But we've since closed the program due to funding issues. If you're willing to keep him, I can transfer ownership to your family." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she relayed the news to her family that evening. Emily and Jack cheered, and even Tom looked visibly relieved. "So he's ours for good?" Emily asked, hugging Chance's neck. Sarah smiled, her heart full. "He's ours for good." The Bennetts had no idea that their decision to keep Chance would lead to an incredible discovery that would change their lives forever. With Chance officially a part of the Bennett family, life on the farm fell into a joyful rhythm. Every day, Chance seemed to grow stronger, his spirit shining brighter with each passing moment. Emily often rode him around the paddock, his smooth gait bringing her endless laughter. Jack continued his dedicated grooming routine, proudly declaring himself Chance's official stylist. Even Tom, who had initially hesitated to take in a horse, had developed a quiet bond with the noble animal, often sneaking him extra carrots when Sarah wasn't looking. But as much as Chance had become a cherished member of the family, the mystery of his past lingered in the back of Sarah's mind. What had brought him to their farm? Why had he traveled so far from Sagefield stables? She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Chance's story. One crisp morning, Sarah decided to visit Sagefield stables in person. She felt a need to learn more about Chance's origins and the program that had rescued him. Rachel, the woman Sarah had spoken to on the phone, welcomed her warmly. "It's amazing to finally meet you," Rachel said, shaking Sarah's hand, "and to know Chance is thriving. He's a special horse. He always has been." Rachel led Sarah to a small office filled with binders and photographs. She pulled out a folder labeled Chance and handed it to Sarah. Inside were detailed notes about his rescue and recovery. Sarah's heart ached as she read about the conditions Chance had been found in. Severely malnourished, his hooves overgrown, and his body covered in scars from years of neglect. "He came to us from an auction," Rachel explained, "one of those places where animals are sold for slaughter if no one bids on them. We couldn't let that happen to him. He was terrified at first, but he had a spark. He wanted to trust people again." Sarah flipped through the papers, her eyes landing on a photograph of Chance from his time at Sagefield. Despite his thin frame and wary expression, his amber eyes held the same quiet determination she saw in him every day. "There's something else you should see," Rachel said, pulling out a yellowed envelope. "We found this tucked in a box with some of Chance's original paperwork. It's addressed to whoever ends up with him." Sarah's fingers trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in elegant handwriting. "To the one who finds Chance, this horse has endured more hardship than any creature should. Yet, despite it all, he has held on to his gentle heart. I don't know where his journey will take him, but I believe he is meant for something extraordinary. Take care of him, and he will repay you with loyalty and love beyond measure. With gratitude, a friend." Sarah blinked back tears as she read the heartfelt words. She glanced at Rachel, who smiled softly. "We always knew Chance was special," Rachel said. "He has a way of bringing out the best in people. I think that's why he found you." On her drive home, Sarah couldn't stop thinking about the letter. She felt a renewed sense of purpose to honor Chance's journey and give him the life he deserved. But little did she know, Chance was about to repay her family in a way she could never have imagined. One rainy afternoon, the Bennetts were busy preparing for an incoming storm. Tom secured the barn doors while Sarah and the kids worked to cover the garden beds. Chance stood calmly in his stall, unfazed by the commotion outside. His steady presence was a comfort to the family as the wind howled through the trees. Suddenly, Daisy began barking furiously, her small body darting toward the front gate. Sarah frowned, wiping her muddy hands on her jeans. "What's gotten into her?" she muttered, following the dog. As she approached the gate, Sarah spotted a young boy, no older than 10, standing in the rain. He was soaked to the bone, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. "Are you all right?" Sarah called, rushing to open the gate. "My sister," the boy stammered, his voice trembling. "She's stuck in the creek. The water's rising, and I don't know what to do." Sarah's heart clenched. "Where is she?" she asked urgently. The boy pointed toward the woods that bordered their property. Without hesitation, Sarah shouted for Tom and grabbed a flashlight. Chance, sensing the urgency in her movements, whinnied loudly from the barn. "You're staying here," Sarah said firmly, but Chance pawed at the ground, his amber eyes locked on her as if he understood the gravity of the situation. Tom ran to join her, carrying a rope. "Let's move quickly," he said. The boy led them through the woods, his small legs scrambling over roots and rocks. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they neared the creek. Its usually calm current now, a raging torrent. "There," the boy cried, pointing to a small figure clinging to a tree branch in the middle of the creek. The girl's face was pale with fear, her arms wrapped tightly around the branch as the water surged around her. Tom immediately tied one end of the rope around his waist, preparing to wade into the water. But the current was stronger than it looked, and Sarah's heart sank as she realized how dangerous the rescue would be. Suddenly, a loud whinny pierced the air. Sarah turned to see Chance trotting toward them, his powerful frame cutting through the rain like a beacon of hope. "What is he doing here?" Tom exclaimed, but Sarah's mind raced with a new plan. "Tom, wait," she said. "Chance is strong enough to handle the current. Let's use him to get to her." Tom hesitated, but there was no time to argue. They quickly secured the rope to Chance's halter, and Sarah led the horse into the water. Chance moved steadily, his hooves finding purchase on the slippery creek bed as Sarah guided him closer to the girl. "Hold on, sweetie," Sarah called, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "We're coming to get you." The girl's wide eyes filled with tears as Chance approached. Sarah reached out, grabbing her hand and pulling her onto Chance's broad back. The horse stood firm, his powerful legs anchoring them against the current. "Good boy, Chance," Sarah murmured, her voice choked with emotion. Slowly, carefully, they made their way back to the shore. The moment they reached solid ground, the girl slid off Chance's back and into her brother's waiting arms. Both children sobbed as they clung to each other, their gratitude spilling over in tearful words. "You saved her," the boy said, looking up at Sarah with wide, grateful eyes. "You and your horse." Sarah turned to Chance, who stood calmly beside her, his chest rising and falling with steady breaths. She threw her arms around his neck, her tears mixing with the rain. "You're incredible," she whispered, "absolutely incredible." News of Chance's heroic rescue spread quickly through the town. Neighbors stopped by to thank the Bennetts and marvel at the brave horse who had saved a life. But for Sarah, Tom, Emily, and Jack, Chance's actions were no surprise. He had always been more than just a horse. He was a part of their family, a symbol of resilience and love. As the family gathered around the fire that evening, with Chance happily munching on a well-earned treat in the barn, Sarah reflected on the journey that had brought them together. From the moment he had appeared at their door, Chance had changed their lives in ways they could never have anticipated, and now he was a hero, a testament to the extraordinary bond between humans and animals. For the Bennetts, life would never be the same, but with Chance by their side, they knew they could face anything that came their way.